My neighbor called the cops on me 52 times in 1 year for spying on his wife, so I got his house condemned with a single phone call. I should have known Victor would be trouble when he moved in at 2 a.m. I bought my collapsing Victorian in the New York suburbs back in 2012, worked 2 jobs for 8 years to save $600,000 cash for a proper rebuild. Our elderly neighbor Mrs. Chen sold in 2021. The new owners arrived in darkness. My wife and I brought welcome wine the next evening. The woman walked through us like ghosts. Victor, her husband, stared at my extended hand for several seconds. We thought you hated us already. You moved in 36 hours ago, I said, confused. Exactly, 36 hours and no complaints. Suspicious. 4 days later, a note claimed my gutters destroyed his driveway. The cracks had been there since 2012, clearly visible in old photos. When I told him to knock instead of leaving notes, he exploded. My trees were attacking his roof. My dog traumatized his cat. My cameras recorded his wife. If you have real problems, call the cops, I told him. Big mistake. He took that literally. First week, 3 police visits about my cameras invading privacy. The cameras faced my own property. Second week, EPA showed up about toxic runoff poisoning his cat. His cat was fine. Third week, building department about my illegal fence from 1987. By month 2, Victor had called 311 17 times. The dispatcher said, "Let me guess, Victor again?" When I called about a real gas leak. That's when I noticed something interesting. Victor was incredibly jumpy. Car honks made him drop groceries. Door slams sent him scrambling. When my daughter's friend rang our doorbell, Victor literally dove behind his Mercedes. Useful information. When we started our permitted renovation in 2022, I warned him clearly. 8 months of construction coming. Everything's permitted. Don't make this harder than it needs to be. He made those 8 months absolute hell. Called inspectors weekly claiming permit violations. EPA monthly about imaginary asbestos. Every false report meant stopping work, showing permits again, losing days. Cost me thousands in delays while we lived in a rental. Your house is held together by lead paint and prayer, I told him after the 7th inspection. Keep pushing me. He kept pushing. After we moved back into our renovated house, I started my payback. Borrowed my buddy's Harley with modified pipes that shook windows. Completely legal to idle it along our property line. Victor would sprint inside, covering his ears whenever that engine roared. I installed concert quality speakers in my backyard, played classic rock at exactly 69 decibels whenever he tried to enjoy his patio. 1 decibel below the legal limit. He bought a decibel meter, stood there helplessly watching it hover at 69. "Turn it down," he'd scream. "It's under 70. Call the cops if you want." He did. Cop showed up with his own meter, shrugged, left. Then one Saturday, I saw Victor's real mistake. Roofers were ripping shingles off his house, tossing them into an open truck. Our century-old house has all had asbestos shingles underneath the modern layer. I'd paid $19,000 for proper removal with full containment. Victor had 3 guys with no masks, no containment, no permits, creating a toxic cloud. I called the asbestos emergency hotline. EPA arrived in 28 minutes. Full hazmat suits. Work stopped immediately. They wrapped his entire house in plastic, took dozens of samples while Victor shrieked in Russian. The violation notice was beautiful. Improper removal of friable asbestos. Immediate cessation of all work required. "You did this," he screamed at me. "Absolutely," I said, raising my coffee mug in a toast. 2 weeks later, an Allstate adjuster knocked on my door, asked about Victor's roof work. I mentioned the EPA shutdown, showed him photos. He took my statement and left. 3 weeks after that, Victor screamed across the fence that Allstate had dropped his coverage. No insurance company would touch him with an active EPA violation. Proper asbestos removal would cost him the same $19,000 I'd paid, but now he couldn't get insurance until it was done. For months, EPA notices accumulated on his door. Victor stopped making eye contact, scurried inside whenever he saw me. Last week, a flatbed delivered a 30-foot steel beam. Victor and some random guy were threading it through his window, using car jacks and a sketchy crane setup. This was the main support beam for his entire first floor, and they were installing it themselves. No contractor, no permits, no structural engineer. I photographed everything while Victor screamed in Russian. Called buildings immediately. Major structural work in progress. No permits posted. The house is literally shaking. The inspector arrived in an hour, saw the beam halfway through the window, the jerry-rigged crane. No permits anywhere. He posted a bright orange vacate order. Structural integrity compromised. Immediate evacuation required. Victor stood there holding that orange notice, looking between it and me. Eye for an eye, I said. This morning, I noticed he'd torn down the notice. Black plastic covered every window. Power tools screamed all night. He's installing that beam himself, thinking buildings won't care once it's done. Just called 911 reporting gas smell and illegal construction in a condemned building. Fire trucks are pulling up now. They're about to axe his door open. I'm on my porch with fresh coffee, watching 8 years of saving and 2 years of harassment end with 1 beautiful orange notice. 52 false police reports. 1 real call to buildings. Game over.